And today I want to talk a little bit about audio, and I'm going to show you how I post-process my audio for these videos. So I'm just sitting here, I'm actually in a garage, and the doors to the garage are wide open. So there's a lot of ambient noise. I hear a sprinkler as well. So a lot of background noise. However, the way I've set up my microphone, it's not picking up that noise that much. So I'm using two microphones. I'm using a Zoom H4n. I'm actually using the onboard microphones of the Zoom H4n, as you can see in this shot here. And it is just out of sight here above the frame. And the condenser mics are pointed down at my mouth and kind of at my chest, as you've seen in my Rode NTG1 demo and tutorial video. And then I have the Rode Video Mic Pro on top of the camera using the plus 20 dB gain, which allows me to use the preamp on the DSLR. Actually allows me to not use it that much, and that's the key. I think I'm about 8 clicks up on the manual settings for the preamp of the 60D. So if you have manual audio controls in your DSLR, then you can control the level of the preamp in whatever DSLR you're using. Now what I've also done with the Zoom is when it's quiet like this, I look at the meters on the Zoom and I set the levels so that nothing in that background, all that stuff that I described, nothing is showing on the meter. And I'll take a shot of that, what the meters look like when I'm not talking. So you can see the meters aren't moving when I'm not talking. So it's not really picking up that background noise. So when I start talking, I can then see what the levels are, and they're pretty good. They're in between -20, -12. That's going to be good enough. Then I'll post-process them, which I'm going to show you here in the editor. Whatever editor you're working in usually has some effects for you to post-process, and we'll make that audio a little bit better. The key is to start off with really clean audio, and then we can raise the volume because our noise floor, the noise in the background, isn't really that noisy. So we can raise that up and add some nice effects to give that nice, really rounded out, warm, professional feeling to our voice with not much or no background noise at all. Now I'm also using a Rode Video Mic Pro attached to the top of the 60D, which is a few feet away from me, probably at least 3 feet away from me, maybe 4 feet away from me in this video. Check out the links in this video's description for all the gear that I'm using here. So those are the two audio sources that I'm going to take into Adobe Premiere and put some effects on and show you how I finish off the audio for each of these videos. So let's take a look at that now. I'm working here in Premiere Pro, but it really doesn't matter because the effects I'm going to use are available in pretty much every video editor option that you're going to purchase or use. So we're going to come up here in our effects panel and go to the audio mixer. Let's begin here by going to the plugins for the effects. We just toggle down this little arrow here on the left, and you can see we've got these panels. Now we're working on channel 2 again for the audio we want to work with. So we just come here, and this is where you're going to find stuff similar in other editing software. So I like to do an EQ, then I'm going to do a dynamics, which is a compressor. That's their term for the compressor I'm going to use. And in this software, that's all I'm going to use. Normally, I would also add a limiter, but in this case, this dynamics plugin, this compressor, has a limiter in it. And in some cases, yours may have one. In other cases, a separate limiter might work best. So we double click here on the EQ, and we bring up this little EQ where we can control the different bands. I'm going to work with the low, which is the bass, the mid frequencies, and the high, which is the treble. And I'm just going to tweak these a little for desired effect to round out the audio. And before I do that, I'm going to come over to the dynamics and double click that. And since I'm using the limiter to get my gain, a limiter is just a really simple compressor which brings down the highs so you don't peak and brings up the lows so the audio levels are fairly consistent. So I'm going to use the limiter to do that. Let's turn off everything right now. Turn off the compressor, turn off that auto switch, and let's just work with the limiter. You can pretend this is just a limiter. I'm going to activate the limiter, and right now the threshold is way too high, basically. The threshold is when does the limiter start working, and really one of the functions I'm using it here for is to make sure we don't peak. So
I'm going to go down to about let's just go -2. If we cross -2, we know we don't want to hit 0, then the limiter will work and stop our audio from peaking at 0. And this little light here will tell us when the limiter is actually activated, if it gets activated at all. And then I'm going to come over here to my makeup here, which is actually a makeup gain. And since this makeup gain is in the compressor section, we're going to take the compressor and activate that. And for the threshold here, I'm just going to bring this up to 0 and the ratio down to 1 so that the compressor is really, it's not working. So our compressor right now isn't going to turn on if we don't want it to, but the makeup gain is still functional. And we're going to increase the gain. I'm going to increase the gain as this plays until I get it somewhere where I'm happier with the audio level, and you should hear that increase.
And natural daylight is just coming in, and that's what you're seeing me lit with right now. No artificial lighting. I have one light, the R300, but I haven't turned it on.
Okay, so you can see our levels were increased significantly. At one point we got up to -6, but we're more oftentimes around -12, sometimes up -6, but we're never peaking, never activating the red here where we're losing our audio. So I went up 12, it happens to be 12.76 on here, and we can take a listen now. It should be significantly louder.
For lighting, I'm just using the open doors.
Now with that, I am bringing up the background noise as I talked about, and what I can hear now is a little bit of the sprinkler, which I mentioned in the beginning of the video. So I can hear a little bit of that sprinkler, but it's not bad, it's not annoying, and if you weren't wearing headphones, you probably wouldn't hear it. So that sounds good. I'm happy with the amount of gain we're getting out of that, and you can also check over here for your meters.
The R300, but I haven't turned it on. So
then we're going to go to the EQ just to round things out and maybe cut out a little bit of noise. There is a little bit of low-end noise in this audio. In general, we don't need all of this low end. So I'm going to cut a little bit of that here. And that, people are worried about that, taking out the bass of your voice, but we can compensate for that by taking this and coming back up a little bit more in the mids. I'm going to make the spectrum here of the mid a little bit more. So we take out this very end of the lows. We come back up around the 200 hertz. And this, I'm going to adjust the highs based on the sound of the audio. So let me reset that to 0. I'm going to do low, mid, high again. And then I'm going to adjust these to where I actually want them this time.
And natural daylight is just coming in, and that's what you're seeing me lit with right now. No artificial lighting. I have one light, the R300, but I haven't turned it on. So actually, let me turn that on. I turned the R300 on for a little bit of fill light, and so you can see the difference in that. So, for this video, to keep it consistent, I'm probably going to turn that back off. Me lit with right now. No artificial lighting. I have one light, the R300, but I haven't turned it on. So actually, let me turn that on. I turned the R300 on for a little bit of fill light, and so you can see the difference in that. So, for this video, to keep it consistent, I'm probably going to turn that back off.
All right, so right about there is where I'm happy. I took out some of that low-end rumble. Now, I'm not an audio pro. This is just what I've learned, and you really have to make sure you're wearing headphones for this so that you can hear what's going on. You must do this with headphones on, and go by your ear. Don't just go by what I'm telling you. And remember, a little goes a long way. And then I pulled this section down here, this mid 3. I added this and pulled this down a little bit because I felt like the sprinklers were coming in too much. And then I used the high. I added just a little bit more clarity back to my voice. Okay, so my levels are good, and the overall sound sounds great. So that's my audio processing.
All right, and that's how I post-process my audio. An EQ, compression, and a limiter usually gets the job done for me. And I'm not talking about noise removal here because the key is to record it really clean so that you don't have to remove noise. So when you record it really clean and start off from a really good place audio-wise, you can really only improve it. When you start off with audio that needs help, you can't really make it better. You can maybe just minimize the bad. Okay, ask questions in the comments, and we'll see you next time.